As the heart, so is the life. It's a profoundly simple, almost haunting quote all the way back from 1904. But what does that actually mean for you and me right now in the modern world? Well, today we're going to decode the timeless secrets of self-mastery that are hidden right inside those words. Welcome to The Explainer.
All right, let's just dive right in. We're looking at James Allen's absolute classic philosophical text, Out from the Heart. Now, I get it. It's super easy to read century-old philosophy and just write it off as, high-minded, abstract poetry. But our goal today is to translate Allen's brilliant work into a highly accessible, step-by-step masterclass for modern life. We're going to look exactly at how to govern the mind.
Here's the roadmap for today's explainer. We've got Mind Shapes Reality, The Architecture of Habit, Lesson 1 covering the body, Lesson 2 on the tongue, Lesson 3 on inner inclinations, and finally, choosing your mental state. Okay, kicking things off with Section 1, Mind Shapes Reality. The inner creates the outer. So Allen's core thesis here is just as radical today as it was back in 1904. He argues that all human suffering, and joy for that matter, originate entirely within the mind. Think about it. The inner stuff, your thoughts, your mind, your heart, those are the true underlying causes. The outer stuff, your actions, your character, your ultimate destiny, those are simply the effects. The mind is literally the infallible weaver of your destiny. Basically, it means you can't go around trying to change the outer shadows of your life without actually fixing that inner light first. Moving right along to Section 2, The Architecture of Habit. Building the mind. Now, you might be wondering if the mind really does shape our reality. How exactly does that machinery work? Well, Allen explains that our minds are essentially just a giant combination of habits. He defines a habit as every established mental condition built up by continuous repetition of thought until it becomes automatic. And honestly, I find that incredibly empowering. It means that traits we usually brush off as fixed personality types, things like despondency, cheerfulness, anger, or calmness, they're actually just acquired habits. They're just conditions we've practiced so much that they feel completely natural. And if they're just habits, well, that means they can be broken or formed through repeated effort. Allen uses this wonderful analogy to explain it. Think of a child learning to write with a pen. At step 1, holding that pen is painfully awkward, it's clumsy, it's difficult, but push through to step 2, persistent practice, and eventually they reach step 3, where writing becomes entirely automatic, natural, and effortless. And Allen argues that virtue is exactly the same way. Goodness is literally just a skill. It might feel incredibly awkward or tough to hold on to a patient thought right now, but with persistent practice, it absolutely becomes your second nature. That brings us to Section 3. Lesson 1, the body. The lowest and easiest steps. So how do we actually put this into practice? Allen starts us off with the absolute easiest steps, simply because an indolent, lazy body pretty much guarantees an indolent mind. Here are the specific physical disciplines he lays out: rousing at an early hour, giving yourself only the required amount of sleep, tackling tasks promptly and vigorously, taking absolutely no food or drink in bed, and abolishing those unnecessary late-night suppers. It's kind of wild how relevant these 1904 habits are to modern productivity and mental clarity, right? Actually, my favorite piece of advice from Allen here is when he says, a man should go to bed to sleep, not to think. Getting rid of that late-night overthinking, stopping the procrastination, these are the absolute foundational steps. Because if you can't master these basic physical impulses, you really aren't ready to master your deeper thoughts. All right, next up is Section 4, Lesson 2, The Tongue, Virtuous Speech. Okay, so once the body is dialed in, we have to shift our focus to the outward manifestations of a chaotic mind, which is our daily speech. Because let's be real, if your words are flying out of control, your mind is definitely out of control. Eradicating the 5 vices of speech requires a seriously intense level of mental regulation. We aren't just talking about the big, obvious offenses like slander and abusive speech. Allen actually includes gossip, just aimless, idle conversation, and captious speech, which is that super annoying habit of nitpicking, fault-finding, or just arguing for the sake of winning an argument. Even levity, when it means sacrificing your personal dignity just for a cheap laugh, that's on the chopping block too. Think about it. To physically stop a gossipy word before it leaves your lips means you have to catch that insincere thought first. It's a massive mental workout. Now we're getting deeper. Section 5, Lesson 3, Inner Inclinations, the deeper motives of the heart. So having governed our bodies and finally silenced our reckless tongues, we tackle the really heavy stuff, the deep internal motives of the heart. Alan outlines 3 monumental virtues here. Step 1 is the unselfish performance of duty. That's where you stop complaining about your obligations and realize that, hey, resentment is really just selfishness. Step 2 is unswerving rectitude, which just means absolute flawless honesty, omitting and adding absolutely nothing to the truth. And then step 3, unlimited forgiveness. This is the ultimate key right here. Alan states that harboring spite, retaliation, or revenge is just utterly ignoble. Casting away your sense of personal injury and your pride, that is the real secret to total emancipation from suffering. Which leads perfectly into Section 6, choosing your mental state, the mathematics of the mind. This right here is the true culmination of this masterclass. It reveals the exact cause and effect relationship of our mental choices. Alan treats this almost like the literal mathematics of the mind. Look at it. Hatred directly equals violence and disaster. Covetousness leads straight to unrest and loss. Pride leads to disappointment. It's fascinating because Alan views sin and evil not as some sort of dark, mystical force, but simply as ignorance. It's exactly like a student failing a math test just because they don't understand the basic rules of arithmetic. If you carry pride, it mathematically equals disappointment. If you're unhappy, it's simply because you're doing the math of your mind incorrectly. But let's contrast that with the right mental conditions. This is your exact lawful blueprint for obtaining profound peace. Love mathematically leads to bliss. Purity leads to intellectual clearness and this invincible sort of confidence. Selflessness yields courage. Humility results in calmness and restfulness. The person who actively practices these conditions is supremely happy because they've actually learned to do the math of life correctly. They finally understand the rules of the universe. Now, Alan wants to be crystal clear about something. This is not easy. First strife, then victory. First labor, then rest. First weakness, then strength. I absolutely love this because it's a direct, passionate reminder that there is no lazy way to truth. None. You have to expect a difficult struggle. You have to actively fight your lower impulses before you can ever realistically hope to achieve this serene peace of the higher life. But what if you fail, right? What if you try to wake up earlier, stop gossiping, or practice absolute honesty and you just mess it up? Well, Alan says, if you fail 10 times, do not be disheartened. If you fail 100 times, rise up. And if you fail 1,000 times, do not despair. Once you enter the right path, success is absolutely guaranteed, just as long as you do not abandon the path. So, I want to leave you with this provocative question. Will you enter the door of discipline today? Are you really ready to stop blaming the outside world, to take yourself in hand, and to begin this curriculum of self-perfection right now? Because as James Allen so powerfully reminds us, there is no lazy way to truth. So go ahead, embrace the glorious labor of mastering your own mind, step by step, habit by habit. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this leaves you inspired to start building your own brilliant reality from the inside out.